Endocrine-disrupting chemicals are everywhere and could have many health impacts, researchers say. A class of chemicals likely in products all over many homes in the United States could be impacting your hormone health. The question is, how worried should people be about these endocrine-disrupting chemicals, EDCs, such as phthalates, BPA or bisphenol A, and brominated flame retardants? The scientific literature around EDCs is still growing, but associations have been suggested between exposure and health problems including brain development, fertility, and puberty, said Dr. Michael Bloom, professor of global and community health at George Mason University College of Public Health in Fairfax, Virginia. And while there are still many questions researchers want to explore around EDCs, organizations like the Environmental Working Group, a nonprofit that researches and advocates for safer products, are encouraging individuals to take steps to avoid exposure. Endocrine-disrupting chemicals affect hormones, which are chemicals that play the important role of carrying messages throughout your body to coordinate different functions in organs, skin, muscles, and other tissues, according to the Cleveland Clinic. Here's what experts have to say about EDCs and what you need to know about them. What are EDCs? Endocrine-disrupting chemicals are not produced by the human body, but influence the way your hormones function, Bloom said. Hormones are essential to many biological processes in the body, such as puberty, reproduction, and brain development. Some of these chemicals can mimic the hormones your body produces, such as estrogen or testosterone. Other EDCs impact hormonal synthesis so that the body makes more of a hormone, less of it, or changes how it breaks down, he added. Phthalates, for example, are synthetic chemicals that manufacturers often use in hundreds of products such as food and beverage containers and plastic wrap. These EDCs interfere with the production of testosterone, according to the Endocrine Society. Brominated flame retardants are used in electronics, clothing, and furniture, and are associated with abnormal function of the thyroid, which has a key role in childhood development, the society said. Endocrine-disrupting chemicals in some way affect hormonal communication, Bloom said. And hormonal communication is a critical pathway by which our brain communicates with tissues, and tissues communicate with one another, an everyday function that keeps us running, hopefully at high efficiency. Chronic exposure to a substance that blocks or alters hormone activity can have serious consequences, added Alexa Friedman, a senior scientist on the Healthy Living team at the Environmental Working Group. Anything that impacts your hormones is very likely to impact other health outcomes, she said. Health impacts of endocrine disruptors. The growing scientific literature suggests that endocrine disruptors could play a part in conditions including attention deficit disorder and impulse control disorders, Bloom added. Hormones play a huge role in the development of the brain and the normal functioning of the brain, so being exposed to these EDCs early in life may change your development, Friedman said. These chemicals may also be linked to the trend of early puberty in girls, which is associated with an increased risk of psychosocial problems, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and breast cancer, said Dr. Natalie Shaw, head of the Pediatric Neuroendocrinology Group at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Studies have also shown concerns around insulin sensitivity and diabetes, obesity, and fertility, Bloom said. The problem with delving more deeply into investigative research is that it's hard to study EDCs and their detrimental impacts on the human body, he added. Most of the evidence comes from using cell models, in which tissues or cells in a dish are exposed to high concentrations of the chemicals, higher than most people would ever naturally come into contact with, Bloom said. To understand what a more biologically realistic level of exposure would do, researchers may look at urine samples for the presence of EDCs and compare the levels against different markers of health, he said. But the current scientific literature is controversial, Bloom said. Some studies say yes, EDC exposure is a significant risk factor for poorer health outcomes, while other reports contradict that. We're in a position where it's like, is it better to be safe than sorry? He added. Researchers, regulatory bodies, and individuals are wrestling with whether it's worth it to make changes now in case the research does show it's necessary to eliminate EDCs or wait to avoid the cost and effort that comes with replacing products for those who are lower risk for exposure to the chemicals, Bloom said. How you are exposed. It may be challenging to totally cut out exposure to endocrine disruptors, Friedman said. The biggest issue with EDCs is that they're so pervasive in the environment and in everything we use, she added. Skin care and personal care products are sources of exposure for both kids and adults, both in the chemical makeup of the products themselves and in the plastic packaging they are in, Bloom said. Pesticides used in agriculture and found on produce may have endocrine disruptors, and groundwater may be contaminated as well, Friedman added. CNN reached out to the National Pest Management Association and the Personal Care Products Council for comment. Believe it or not, fairly significant concentrations are found in home dust, Bloom added. The presence in dust is especially a concern when it comes to toddler and infants who spend a lot of time close to the ground, he said. Many people of color are exposed to greater levels of endocrine disruptors, Bloom said. Some researchers have speculated that is because products marketed toward them, including hair care products, have higher concentrations, Bloom said. Someone that's going through their regular routine, using their favorite personal care products, drinking water from their tap, eating produce, they may be exposed to really small levels of EDCs in a lot of different ways that accumulate over the lifetime, Friedman said. Reducing your exposure. It can be difficult to tell what products may expose you to more endocrine disruptors just by looking at the label, Bloom said. The components of many products are proprietary, meaning protected by the company's ownership, so they are not always clearly labeled, he added. There's no clear labeling requirements, and the industry may change what they use over time, Bloom said. That means a product tested 2 years ago may be manufactured differently now and introduce different exposure levels, he added. Scientific investigators, environmental health scientists, are constantly trying to play catch-up with products being used by industry, Bloom said. There are steps government agencies are taking to help protect consumers and more research still being done, according to an emailed statement from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. EPA has taken action to regulate these chemicals in the environment and provides additional scrutiny for chemicals, including pesticides, through the Endocrine Disruptor Screening Program, the statement said. The prevalence of EDCs and a lack of clarity in labeling doesn't mean there is nothing you can do, however. Friedman recommends finding manageable changes you can make that still fit with your budget, priorities, and lifestyle. Gradually replacing personal care products one at a time as you use up individual products is a great place to start, she said. Filtering EDCs out of the water supply is also a manageable way to start, she added. There are plenty of reputable online databases available to the public to search for safer personal care products, such as SkinSafeProducts.com, developed by allergists and dermatologists with the Mayo Clinic and Skin Deep from the EWG, Bloom said. It isn't about overhauling everything. Friedman has curly hair, so she sticks with her same shampoo and conditioner, but she finds products that she wouldn't mind switching and makes changes there, she said. The EWG also has a tap water database so that people can search their drinking water quality by zip code and use a water filtration guide to pick a system that is right for them. It might not be so easy for people to change where they live, maybe even their water, those sorts of environmental sources that are just part of your life. The air you breathe, the things you're exposed to at work, etc., she said. But personal care products is one thing where I think folks have a lot of autonomy and what they're purchasing within reason.